like to have minutes to address the board about any general issues?
Anyone that's joined from the public, if you'd like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand function and I'll ask yourself to mute yourself. Give it here a second to see if anybody selects that. I think we're okay.
Okay, very good. All right, well then we'll move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the Neuse River Blueway plan. We have a presentation tonight from Emma Lyles. So Emma, take it away.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to share my screen, so please let me know if you can't see this. Does that look good to everybody?
Yes.
Great. All right, so the Neuse River Blueway Plan is a comprehensive effort to improve public access to and awareness of the Neuse River as a valuable natural resource and recreational asset. The plan provides a long-term vision for the creation of a cohesive paddling trail that will connect over 2,000 acres of parks, greenway land, and open space along the 25 miles of the Neuse River that flow through the city of Raleigh and Wake County. In tonight's presentation, I'm going to be covering the planning process, the existing river access today, the 3 rounds of community engagement we conducted, the plan's recommendations for improvements, both system-wide and site-specific, and our next steps. So the plan was developed in partnership with the National Park Service through the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, a diverse group of project partners representing multiple jurisdictions, public and nonprofit landowners, advocacy organizations, and various other stakeholder groups provided essential guidance and expertise throughout the planning process. Just some examples of who we partnered with includes the Town of Clayton, Town of Smithfield, Triangle Land Conservancy, and the Falls Whitewater Group, and the Carolina Canoe Club. So there are currently 7 existing river access points along the Neuse River managed by the city of Raleigh. The existing system has been built up over several decades, with each individual launch developed more or less in isolation. And so as a result, the distance between river access points is highly variable, and the design of each launch varies significantly. Some of them, such as the newly developed launch at Riverbend, are fully accessible for a variety of watercraft, and were designed with adequate parking, boat drop-off, and restrooms within close proximity to the boat launch. But other locations present maintenance challenges, extremely long distances between available parking and the river access point, or other design challenges. So the 3 rounds of community engagement were conducted. Our initial engagement had 555 participants and mostly asked about current paddling activity people participated in already. For example, one of the questions we asked that really helped drive the plan was, what is the ideal amount of time for a paddle trip? This helped us space out the recommended additional launches to help reflect what the community asked for. We also asked how experienced paddlers were, since we wanted to make sure that we were reaching out to a reasonable cross-section of the paddling community. The second round of engagement had about 98 participants and specifically asked users about existing river access and asked them to grade individual launches and suggest recommended improvements. And the last round had 44 participants, and we asked people to rank the recommended short-term improvements and also to give feedback on the draft document at that point. This graph shows the question, are you satisfied with the plan? And almost 3/4 of people who responded were either very or completely satisfied. So first off, I wanted to talk about the system-wide improvements that the Neuse River Blueway plan recommends. First off, with maintenance. So the access points along the Neuse River are subject to frequent flooding and siltation. And as a result of these natural occurrences, access points along the riverbank can become inundated, muddy and slippery, and even blocked by debris. So when feasible, the city of Raleigh will periodically perform maintenance activity, such as removing siltation from constructed launches at primary access points. But most secondary or natural access points may become difficult or impossible to use for extended periods of time following flood events. The primary river access points will be established at key nodes along the river, recommended to be developed to accommodate heavy use, and will include features such as restroom access, expanded parking, and ADA accessible launch designs where feasible. The plan also recommends a variety of signage, including wayfinding signage along the river, safety signage at launch locations, and signage along the Greenway river access intersections to help the boaters portage more safely. The incorporation of public art should also be considered when designing new primary river access points, as well as along vehicular or Greenway bridges that span the river. The plan also recommends building unity between the different users of the Neuse River Greenway Trail and the Neuse River, the cyclists, pedestrians, and paddlers, by hosting City of Raleigh events along the river to highlight the different experiences that the river can provide. 34% of participants from the initial online survey indicated that they rent their paddlecrafts instead of owning them. And since the closure of the privately owned Paddle Creek, there's now a need for boat rentals on the Neuse River. So this plan recommends that the City of Raleigh look at adding this as a service they provide in the future, along with guided tours of the river and river cleanup days. And lastly, the improvements recommended in this plan will increase the navigability and accessibility of the upper 25 miles of the Neuse River, and further access improvements downstream could position the Neuse River for designation as a state or national water trail. So here are those existing access points y'all saw earlier in the presentation. And here we have the full Neuse River Blueway system all laid out. So proposed river access points are distributed to maximize flexibility and accessibility, creating more options for those shorter 1 to 2 hour paddling trips that are ideal for casual users and recreation programs. The plan also includes the addition of 6 new launches at Thornton Road, Louisburg Road, Buffalo Road Athletic Park, Alvis Farm, Raleigh Farm, and Mile Plantation Road. The plan also includes short-term and long-term proposed improvements, which I will walk us through now. So first up, beginning in the Neuse River, we have Falls Dam. It is an existing launch with a concrete landing and precast block steps. This is a very popular, very busy site. So our short-term proposed improvements include improving the launch for increased safety and accessibility, and to evaluate the site for feasibility of a concrete ramp or boat slide. And long-term, we propose to develop additional facilities in coordination with future master planning and site development. And I did want to point out, though, in our community engagement, that this was ranked highest in the survey to prioritize the short-term improvements. Next up, we have Thornton Road. This has an existing beach launch on the site, but it is a pretty unfeasible portage distance from the parking lot. So short term, we propose to develop a new concrete ramp launch in partnership with the Wildlife Resource Commission, and long term to develop additional facilities in coordination with future master planning and site development. And this was rated the second highest for prioritized short-term improvements. Next up, we have Louisburg Road. This is an undeveloped Greenway property that just has the Greenway Trail running through it right now. We added this as a launch because we heard a lot through the community engagement that people wanted a launch at Horseshoe Farm. But since that is not an appropriate use for a nature preserve, we looked for a nearby solution that would help fill that need. And so our long-term proposed improvements is to develop the site for additional Greenway trailhead parking and for river access improvements. Next, we have Riverbend, an existing site with a concrete ramp. No proposed improvements for this site since it was just recently completed. Next, we have Elizabeth Drive, an existing natural launch. Short term, we propose improvements to decrease erosion and sedimentation and to improve traction. But long term, we do recommend to phase out this location once a new permanent river access point is established either at Buffalo Road Athletic Park or Alvis Farm. Then we have Buffalo Road Athletic Park. Currently, there is no launch at this site, but it is included in the master plan. So long-term, we do propose to develop this launch and additional facilities in coordination with the future master planning and site development. Then we have Alvis Farm, which is an undeveloped park property. This is a really ideal location on the river. Conditions on the riverbank look really good, really suitable for a river launch. And so we do propose long-term to develop this launch and additional facilities in coordination with future master planning and site development. Then we have Mill Burney, which is already an existing beach launch. People really love it. We do propose short-term to maintain this launch and long-term to evaluate the potential for river access improvements and additional facilities in that coordination with future master planning and site development. At Anderson Point, there's an existing gravel ramp launch. In short term, we propose to improve this existing launch and expand the parking nearby in coordination with the Wildlife Resources Commission. Full Road has an existing wooden stairs launch, and we short term propose to improve and decrease erosion and sedimentation and to improve traction. Raleigh Farm is just an existing Greenway parking lot, and the Greenway trail runs through the site. And so long-term, we propose to evaluate potential for river access at this site and add those additional facilities in coordination with future master planning and site development. And lastly, we have Mile Plantation Road. This is similar to Raleigh Farm. There's the Greenway parking lot and the Greenway trail, but this site also has an informal launch at the bridge. And so short term, we propose to make improvements to decrease erosion and sedimentation and to improve traction. So our next steps for the plan, tonight, we're doing this presentation, have some discussion, and then we will incorporate any edits we hear and work with the communications department to get a final City of Raleigh branded report. And we will be back in February where y'all will take action to either recommend the plan to City Council or not. And if that goes well, we're shooting for March 2nd for our City Council presentation. And to help facilitate discussion and answer questions, I'm just going to put up this system-wide map. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Emma. Anyone have any questions or comments? Particularly Lex, are you here? Do you have anything you'd like to add as our representative? I don't think he's on. Okay.
I've got a comment if I could.
Sure. Yep. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, solid plan. I really like everything I see in there. I did have one comment a long time ago I'd like to repeat, and it also showed up a couple times in the survey points, is to, or what I'd like to get a statement in there somewhere to, in the future, consider extending the Blueway system into Walnut and Crabtree Creek. So if we could get a statement just to study feasibility or potential for future expansion into those.
Sure, definitely.
Streams.
I wanted to say that at the we heard lots of folks advocating for restroom facilities when we were talking with the community about Parks Bond, and I'm pleased to see that so many of these proposed launches will have comfort stations. I think that is a good response from what we heard from the public.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Beverly.
A couple of questions. Are all of these launch sites owned by the City of Raleigh and operated by the City of Raleigh?
Yes.
Because on Mile Plantation, this doesn't relate specifically to the canoe ramp, but that road has no signage telling you that there is a parking lot or canoe ramp or anything else there. So I didn't know whether that was a Wake County issue or a City of Raleigh, but you don't even know to turn into that parking lot to find anything. So that would be helpful. And this is also slightly unrelated, but related. There is so much debris in the river at some of the bridges, that it's causing a tremendous amount of flooding on the Neuse River Trail. It's amazing that water can even get through. Does the Blueway plan deal with any of that? It's not really, some of it's trash, but a lot of it is just logs and branches and things like that.
We're definitely aware of that issue. We're working right now to add an additional appendix. That's going to be a river safety appendix. And one of the things we're going to address is forming a stakeholder group with, Raleigh Fire Department, NCDOT, the U.S. Army Corps, to address those future log jams and try to consult on how we can fix that. But it's definitely an issue that we've heard a lot about in the survey. For sure.
So that's stormwater. And every time that you see those debris dams, that's usually an indication of more erosion and trees that have fallen because of erosion. So the source of that erosion has to be addressed too. It's
Mhm.
a big problem.
I think a lot of it's caused when they let water out of the dam.
Well, it's a big problem with development and all other kinds of stuff, and taking down trees.
Mhm.
Plug that again.
I agree. Yeah.
Good comments. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments, questions? Lindsay? Yep.
Yes, this is Lindsay. Question for you, Emma. Forgive me, but I cannot remember the name of the park that the folks were advocating for last year along the river. But how much and I've been looking through our old bond documents, and I'm just not finding it. So hope you remember what it is.
The Whitewater Park? Is that
Yes,
the
that
one?
one, the Whitewater
Okay.
Park. And how
Yeah.
does that overlap with this? I was wondering if you could provide some context.
Definitely. So in the Falls Dam section of the document, we did add in a section a little bit about the history of the Falls Whitewater Park and the feasibility study. And so I think that'll get addressed more in those long-term proposed improvements for Falls Dam, looking probably at master planning and expanding into it's called the Leonard Tract site right now, the undeveloped park property right next to it.
That's right. Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay. I read your memo that was attached, but I didn't get to read the much longer attachments.
You didn't get to the 93-page document? Oh no.
No, ma'am. But thank you for all this. It's great and very exciting. It sounds like so much fun for the community.
Great. I'm glad you brought that up, Lindsay. I think that's a good point and relevant to some discussion we might be having later on as well, related to the parks bonds. Great. Any other comments or questions? I think it looks like a great document too, informative, and the spacing of the launches makes a lot of sense. As it says in the agenda, we don't need to do any action tonight. We're just reviewing, and the entire document was attached to the agenda. So please do take the time to look through it. It's 93 pages, but a lot of that is graphic and, information on the survey from the survey.
And several appendices too.
Yeah. So don't be scared. And so do take a look, and then at our next meeting, the plan is that we would go ahead and take action at that time.
Great, thank you guys.
Okay, anyone have anything else? It's hard for me to see everybody, so just speak up if you do. No, okay. Great. Good, well, thank you, Emma. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda then, which is Stephen Bentley with a bond update.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. It's good to see everybody on the call. Tonight, I'm going to give you basically the same presentation that I gave to the City Council on Tuesday. And it's short, it's 10 slides. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. And let me know if you can see it now. How do we look?
Looks great.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. All right. So on Tuesday, I gave a presentation to the Raleigh City Council. There has been a request from the council to re-engage the board about a potential parks bond this fall. Just as a reminder, we do have some new board members. So half the slides are just a little bit of a refresher on the great work that you all did in a pretty short period of time. It's ironic, it was this time last year. So, but your task in 2020 was to develop a list of bond projects. Staff was to support you in developing that list. The list was to focus on equity as well as other factors. And throughout the process, the park board was to engage the public. What staff did is we brought the board, I believe the number was around $500 million worth of projects, and we scored them for you. But prior to scoring them, the board weighed in on our matrix or our criteria, what weighted more and what did not. But in front of you is some of the criteria we use, and I'll just name off a few. The city's strategic plan, obviously we talked about equity as a priority. how people can get access and their score, how their proximity to a park, safety, deferred maintenance, whether projects were near transit connectivity. And after we scored them, the board then went through multiple meetings of creating a set of tiered projects. Prior to creating those tiers, the park board actually had 5 meetings, I think 2 of which were just monthly meetings and 3 were special meetings. You also hosted 3 public open houses across the city. We utilized an online web portal. We took comments via email. We had a text. You could text your comments to the city. You could call, and it culminated into about 400 comments over about a 2-month period of time. So what you developed, and this information is in your backup, was 3 tiers. I'll round the numbers. It was 100 million, 150, and 200. And that did not include Dix Park. You can see in that bottom bullet, we did load, I think it's 20 plus pages of documents. I know you each had a notebook, but now that we're all living digitally and virtually, we created one single PDF, but it has some of the maps in there. Obviously it has your list, it has the criteria and the weighting that we utilize that I described a little bit earlier. So what the council directed the park board to do are these 3 items, and I'll go through them. And again, a very short period of time, and I'll go over the schedule at the end, but the council asked the park board to create an addendum report with themes and recommendations to your 2020 Parks Bond development. So you created your 2020 Parks Bond list. The council now wants you to look at information over the last year, whether it be planning documents, organizational changes that have occurred, and reflect upon those as in relation to your 2020 list. The second item is they want you to identify lessons learned, changes in our community's priorities, and key considerations that have occurred in part due to COVID-19 and our community's priorities around social justice. So a lot has changed in the year. So the council's giving you a platform to reflect upon what has changed and what does that mean for your bond list. And then finally, understanding that COVID is impacting everybody's wallets, including the city of Raleigh. So what are key financial considerations posed by COVID-19 and the ongoing fiscal drivers that should be considered? So it's a lot of wordy, but the way we see is what has changed over the last year, how has COVID impacted our lives, and how does that relate to the bond? How has the city's more focus on social justice, how does that impact the bond? And then finally, take into consideration that COVID is impacting the financial considerations moving forward. So I'm going to go over, this is a really high level bond schedule, but you have your meeting tonight and your meeting next month. In March, the council is going to have a retreat in early March. We don't have the date specifically yet. And the council is going to talk about the Parks Bond in detail. So they want the board to deliver this addendum report for use for their retreat in March. The council has the opportunity to further discuss it in April. Hopefully they'll establish a bond amount and give further direction to staff on which projects are most important and create their own set of priorities. In May, they still have time to look at the projects, but in June timeframe, the council actually has to have their first vote, and that's called a preliminary findings resolution. So in finance terms, back to layman's terms, it means that the council has to announce the intent of the bond and how much the bond is going to be in June. They then have to vote on giving bond instructions to our finance department. In August, they have to conduct a public hearing. And these are all like the legal requirements. And then the referendum would actually be on October 5th. So our suggestion as a staff, understanding a lot of work went into the park board's time and commitment in looking at developing the 2020 list. And we have a short amount of time again, that staff would like to take feedback tonight. Our proposal is to actually send you a survey between now and February and have questions that revolve around those 3 key things that I shared which is, I'll forward the PowerPoint, but it is in the memo, which is attached. We'll then engage you virtually, obviously, again in February about the results of that survey, allow the board to reflect upon the survey results and provide staff some further input and comments on this report. And then we have to compile that report and get it to the council by their first meeting in March. So our proposal is to work with you through a survey, reflect upon that survey in February, and then take comments in February and draft a report. And we'll work with Jen and Beverly on that final report so it goes to the council in March. That's the final slide. I can keep up the screen or I can pull it down, but we welcome some feedback.
Yeah, I think you could pull it down. It's just
Okay.
so we can see each other and
Yeah.
talk a little bit more. Thank you, Stephen.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thanks for that overview. One quick question that I don't think you have an answer to is, do you have any idea what the council's appetite is as far as amounts for the bond this go round? Okay.
We do not. No.
And are we still looking at the 3 tiers though? So we would have the, whatever those, as far as, you know, last time we had the 150, 200.
I think that will be up to the board itself.
Okay.
I think with the council's interest, and Oscar can jump in to his pleasure, they know that you put a lot of work in over 3 months and identified projects based on some pretty solid criteria, which I believe align with a focus on equity and deferred maintenance. I think that they want to know our lives have changed the last year. So from a thematic level, whether it be, I'll be hypothetical, we all wanted to get outside. So do you have a narrative about the importance in outdoor investments or walking access to parks? I'm not, we can definitely talk more about projects and reprioritizing them if that's the appetite of the board. I think we have a very narrow time frame to do that. I think they just want the board to reflect upon the individually our lives have changed, our community has changed, we have different priorities. What does that mean for the list you've already created?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in as well, and thank you, Stephen, for the great presentation and the next steps. But I do feel though that that we still should go with a tiered approach. You know, basically prioritize, because we really have no idea at what levels are going to want to be funding these. But at least it probably gives an opportunity once again for council to consider if, you know, there are going to be some additional funds or even what our prioritizations would be overall. So we're still providing that level of recommendation to them. So.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, before you talk, one thing I just want to say for everybody is if you open up the document that's attached to the board docs and the agenda, I think it's page 10 has where we landed, like that's the tiered description. So if you just want to pull that up while we're talking and look at that, you can. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Sure. Well, 2 comments. The first is a question also on the money and the atmosphere. And is there an expectation that we're going to trim this down, or is there an attitude that money's cheap right now and it's a great time to borrow?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I do believe prioritization, what is truly most important, and then the opportunity to reflect upon. So much has changed in the last year. We'll probably look at this list with a different lens, and they want your input on what that lens is and what comes out from projects and thematic priorities.
Okay. Second comment is related to COVID and recognizing it's been completely consuming for the whole year. I've got a general concern about narrowing things down in a reaction to COVID and potentially directing money towards things that may not seem as important 2 or 3 years from now once everybody's vaccinated. And so I'm looking for guidance on what changes industry-wide have we seen related to COVID that we think are going to stick and endure over the next 10 years? And what are the demands that are really unique to the moment? And I don't know how you can help, but in any
Yeah.
thoughts or guidance on where the industry thinks we're going in the lifespan of this next bond?
Sure. And I'll even invite people like Scott and Oscar. We lived in Ken, who's on the call. I do think at-will activities for a while, meaning people participate in their own time and outdoors. People congregating is not going to go away very quick. Even if everybody, Dave, got their vaccination, I think human behavior is still going to be a little bit skeptical about doing that. But I think one thing we could do is follow up. There's been lots of writing in our journals and professional journals on kind of what the trends are and where the future of public space goes or buildings go. And we can send that to you in advance, actually with your survey, so you can kind of go through it. But I'd allow Ken and Scott and Oscar to reflect, because we've all been in this for a while.
Yeah, definitely. And before I allow Ken or Scott to chime in, I mean, over the course of the last year, some of our park sites and greenways have had the highest usage that we've ever witnessed. So obviously we know there's an appetite for utilization of open space and trails within our system. So I think we have and that's going to continue even after the pandemic. I think, people have been able to get out of their house, find out the great parks, amenities, and trails that Raleigh offers, and are going to continue to use them. Now, going back to your traditional recreation, your community center, your other spaces like that, I don't necessarily think that things are going to change. I think they will stay the same, if not get even more popular, because of what people have experienced this past year. So there may just be a continued appetite for more. But the one thing that I do see increasing is possibly the self-directed leisure activities within our parks. So that's just one thought. But I know Scott and Ken have a different perspective, because they, their facilities have really, been serving the community very well this past year, and so they know some more trends to update us on.
Oscar, I think from the resources side, the self-curation of the self-directed experience has grown in our outdoor recreation and nature preserves. Visitation is up 38% compared to the same period in time. And if Lisa's still on the call, she can probably chime in on their Greenway trail counting early during the pandemic. And I don't know that it's gone down, but early during the pandemic, we were seeing increases of 200% or more year-to-date comparison, and Lisa can affirm that. So I do believe, because that was all that was available, was the opportunity to get outside and social distance, I think people may have discovered more of the park 10,000 acres than they realized. So I don't think that is going to go away. Our goal is, of course, to keep capturing them while they're there, so that they sustain that. But so I do believe that's going to increase. But we also know that people who have not been able to participate in their traditional experiences, one that I have, and then Ken can comment from there, is our art center. Even though we are managing that with reservations and reduced classes, they are going. People have, the opportunity to, and really the therapeutic need to express themselves is still there. And I think as Ken's community centers are able to do more of that programming, people are going to flock back to them because they are looking for that experience again.
I'm not going to add too much different, other than what we anticipate is we're getting calls regularly to be able to come back for dance, for martial arts, for ballet, for fitness programs, to be able to do that. One, because we're convenient; two, because we're affordable; and three, I think it was Woody who put out there, the mental health perspective of what COVID has done to people cannot be underestimated. As I watch people in different places in their rooms participating in this meeting, it's just not what we're kind of designed to do, is to congregate. Now, to what Scott and Oscar brought up, I think people have found parts of our parks that they never knew existed. And that's been a real benefit, as people have gotten out and enjoyed those experiences. And I guess I'll leave you with the perfect perspective. Even our active adults, they told us, we will do ballet on the basketball court, until my toes can't be felt, right? So when I've got seniors who want to get back, because that's not just health and wellness, that's social, mental, that's that mental acuity and the opportunities to be able to do those things. So as the team knows that I work with, I will use everything I can to show how we are essential in the everyday quality of life for our city. And I think if we position ourselves right coming out of this, we're going to see a tremendous uptick. And what we've done in between that is how do we serve the community for what they need today? And that ranges anything from being testing sites to fall athletics, to art, to nature, to all those type of things. But yeah, I think if we do this right, we're going to see an uptick in activity.
This is Lisa.
Yep. Go ahead, Lisa.
I would just like to add, I wasn't sure of the percentage that Scott had indicated that there was an increase in usage of the Greenway system. Did you say 200%, Scott?
Mm-hmm.
I actually think it's a little bit more than that. And to expand on a little of what Ken had said, we have people that are discovering that for the first time that there actually is a Greenway system. So you have those people that are now discovering the Greenway system. They're not going to go away. So after the fact, we're going to, post-COVID world, we will see probably more usage than we saw pre-COVID, just on that premise alone.
So
And
300 million?
I'm sorry?
It sounds like 300 million is where we,
Oh.
What we need.
400 million?
Yeah.
Yep. And the penny tax, right?
Need the penny tax.
I have a question. We had a lot of conversation. I'm a person who really misses not going to do water fitness. Makes me very sad. I miss it a lot. So we had a lot of discussion about a pool facility for Chavis Park. And I'm wondering what the staff thinks about swimming pools. Personally, I really look forward to feeling like it's safe to go back to the pool. I don't feel that way now. But what about are pools something that are going to be needed at the same rate?
So, Marcia, I'll take that one for you. We had 28,000 people come through our pools over the summer, and that was opening up July 6th through Labor Day. I know that now you don't have scale for that, but for a compressed period of time where we had limited capacity, we were blown away by that number. We had some weeks where we didn't hit one in, one out very often, but we did hit it a few times over that summer. What we've done since then is we've transitioned we have all of our year-round pools are open. So Optimus, Millbrook, Pullen, and Buffalo Road are all open right now. And really what we're accommodating right now is lap swimming. So we've got recreational lap swimming, your drop-in folks. We're working with the third-party swim teams. We're working with the school system on swim space. What we're finding is participants haven't gotten comfortable yet with instruction because a lot of that's close contact. You're in the pool with the instructor. And so that's where we're not seeing a tremendous amount of appetite for people coming back for instruction. We've been kind of moving that on a month-by-month basis of whether or not we're going to offer those programs. But we've been very active in our pools. Okay. The one that I will say to your question about Chavis, and it really depends how that goes, and I'm not trying to lead anyway, is Buffalo Road's been a little bit of, as I'm working on revenues for next year, I just don't know. And it's because that's a personal decision of, am I comfortable to go to an indoor recreation environment that everything's airborne, right? Chlorine's airborne and now everything else is airborne. So we're not necessarily seeing the activity at Buffalo Road yet, but Pullen, we've hosted a couple swim meets so far this year, very successfully. We're seeing good activity with our lap and our competitive swim groups using that space.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other comments, questions, Beverly? Yeah.
Well, related to Dave sticking his thumb up for more and more, I think that this conversation and the increased need and usage speaks to dropping the bottom tier and altogether. I mean, why would we go? I mean, we were just absolutely struggling at that point of such a low amount. And so as we look at going higher potentially, but I think not even offering the lowest number would be one of my feelings on that.
Well, and the elephant in the room is Dick's, right? Because that's not included in any of these numbers. So that was part of why we had that 100, that lowest tier for 100 million is depending on what Dick's is, that might end up meaning the bond itself is 150, something else. But yeah, I agree. And I think with all the people using parks, hopefully we'll get some support, right?
Oh, I don't think there's any, I think if they put it on today without any planning whatsoever, if the housing bond passed at 73%, this bond is going to pass even higher because of all of these people who are using it more and are more invested in this asset in our community.
I saw Lindsay's hand and then Brad.
Thank you. So question, and I know this has been asked before, but is there any possible way to get more clarity about like the direction that the Dick's funding request is going? And I still don't understand how, if Dick's is a Raleigh park, how come it doesn't fold into some awareness and planning with this group too, since this is Raleigh Parks Board and Dick's is a Raleigh park. Can someone help me understand that better? I still don't understand that.
Stephen or Oscar?
I'll take a shot because Oscar's still new, so he doesn't have the benefit of history. Part of this is we heard this concern before from the board, and the first change we made with this next iteration of planning was to bring Jennifer on the leadership committee. So now she sits at the table with the mayor, and well, she sits on a screen with the mayor and others, and that concern has been carried forward. I think the unique aspect that there is a significant philanthropic donor has the council wanting to hold it closer. And that's just my observation. We have a contractual relationship with the Conservancy right now, that they are our philanthropic partner. And I think the council keeps that project a little bit, well, not a little bit, they keep it closer to them than providing it to the board. That's probably the best I could answer it, Lindsay.
Okay, it just makes it really hard to plan,
It does. It has all sorts of ramifications, even within our own department, to be honest with you. So.
Okay, all right, well, thank
Maybe
you.
the reason they have it separate just because it kind of, maybe provides the board and staff a little bit more clarity and really kind of focusing on the overall park system rather than trying to, get that large dollar amount, whatever that may be, into it and kind of just, muddling what we're trying to do with the rest of the park bond.
Thank you.
Brad?
Yeah, I can speak to the Dick's thing too, since I don't have as much political weight on that. But I'll first say that I do think that we have to go big. And I think the hard thing is I don't think any of the first 100, maybe even 200, we can really get out of order. You could say that Javis Pool we're not going to pools right now, but we're talking about something that's going to be done 6 years from now. And that's a project that should have been done 20 years ago. So it's not really, I think the number we're talking about is it has to be big and has to go large. I think if anything, Dick's is the extra thing in this list. My personal opinion is that Dick's is not actually run by council. I think it's very generous to say that council wants to keep it close. I think that there's a few rich people who are running it, who want their signature project, but they're not as rich as people in Tulsa who could pay for a $600 million park. And so the park system has been left holding the bag a little bit to make up the difference between their dream and what our philanthropic community can actually afford. If we had a philanthropic community that could build a 300-acre park, they wouldn't be talking to us at all. But right now, as it stands, the Conservancy pays for a bunch of marketing, and the park system pays for its maintenance, pays for its programming, pays for all of that stuff. And so their marketing staff is bigger than the Parks Department marketing staff, paid for by private funds. So I think there's a real inherent tension there, but I do think that if there's anything that this COVID situation makes me say in terms of a reflection would be Dix is a choice project. It is in a part of the city that is high parks density already. It is in a part of the city that already has significant resources. And as a facility as it is right now, it is great. It would be great to make it, it would be great to make it sexier and awesome. And I hope maybe the good nights will turn over and drop, a couple $100 million into it. But I think we should be really skeptical about that investment. I think the challenge is that as a board, we don't have a marketing team to tell the story of the rest of our system. But if there's anything that this COVID crisis has taught us, it's that people need parks in their neighborhoods. They need Greenway access in their neighborhoods. They need their greenways to work in their neighborhoods. They need things that are close to them to work. And that's where the investment needs to go. And we get through 300 million really fast without just doing that. And so I think if there's anything we say, it's that. I think Dix is sexy, but it's a really challenging thing because we have a goal as a department of equity, and that is a philosophical choice that the department made decades ago, which means that we don't necessarily have sexy things. We have close things. We have things that make people's lives better. We have, small improvements in neighborhoods that make people's lives better. That's hard when you go look at Cary and they're going to drop $100 million on a 10-acre park in downtown. And we want our own little sexy thing. But I think in this context, if COVID says anything, it's that we should be investing in our neighborhoods, and we should let Dix be a privately funded thing over the next 50 years. But that's, I think it is sexy. It's hard to say like, oh, don't invest in it, but I don't know. I live 2 miles away from it. I don't think we should put any more city money into it. And frankly, I get frustrated we're spending so much resources on it. But most of you know that. Those of you who are new who have not heard my rants about it yet.
Thanks, Brad. Did you have something else you wanted to touch on too?
The big thing to me is that's all that COVID taught me. We should be looking at projects that are needed, that increase coverage around the city, that meet longstanding needs. I think there's a debate about whether or not Chavis does that, of course, but Chavis fills a cultural need in the city, fills a commitment that the city made 40, 50 years ago in that facility. And the city's planning team has done a really great job changing the approach to that project so that it complements Pullen and it doesn't duplicate Pullen. And so, I was skeptical even of investing in that because we've invested so much down here. But I think we should be really concerned about making sure that we have coverage and that people have access to these facilities close to them so they can get outside. And Dix is a choice anyway.
Well, thanks for that. I want to piggyback on that real quick and open it up again. One thing I have heard, and I will say that during the bond process a year ago, I was fighting hard for all the parks that ended up here in the first tier, and felt very strongly about deferred parks and things that haven't that we've been kind of promising for a while or needing for a while. But I have heard the comment from council members, and it's been said, publicly in council, that they feel like it's perhaps not as spread around the city as it should be. And I know that's something we argued about. Brad, I know you said that clearly, that we needed to have more around the city. And so I just want to throw it out there. I'm not saying that we need to necessarily reorganize anything in my mind, but it would be something to think about and look at this report that was sent out and just kind of look through it and see if there are any other projects that, are in the specifically E and B council districts that should possibly be considered. And I don't know that there are, because when we looked at it, we looked pretty with a lot of scrutiny and felt like these were the ones that really deserved the most attention. So I'm not sure that that would change, but that's something that definitely I think we need to just be aware of. I saw some hands, I think. Yeah, Brad.
Very, very small piggyback on that. I don't think there's what we were running into. I think I can characterize this for the group. We were running into this problem where just to cover the big projects that are deferred, we were running up against that $100 million. Yeah. And a lot of the parts of the city that aren't covered right now are not areas where there is income-based need.
And they're newer parks in general too. Yeah. And so a lot of the,
but they're richer, so they weren't showing up. They weren't grading very well on our grading list.
Yeah. There's that too. That's right. And I made that argument to the council member who I spoke with and said, you know, we felt these were the ones that had the most need, you know, and we are one city, and I don't know that people themselves look at districts, you know, when I ask them and my friends what council district you're in, they have no idea. So, you know, I don't know that individuals look at it the same way, but just wanted to put that on the table. Lindsay, you had a comment. Yeah.
Well, assessing the districts, Green Road, gym number 1, which needs air conditioning, that's District B. And Laurel Hills, which still needs full completion of air conditioning, that's District E. So if those were reprioritized as they should be as a matter of equity, then that would enhance the scope of coverage that maybe was in perhaps lacking before, and that is a need, and that is expanding coverage, and then maintaining the commitment to the Shelley Lake Sertoma Arts Center is District A, and then Tarboro Road Community Center needing air conditioning is District C, and then Method is D. So that is all of them right there, and that is need. So if we were to reprioritize those would be community centers around the entire city and based on equity and need, which we should be prioritizing. That is what COVID-19 has really shined a light on, is need and equity, and especially hearing how folks want those art centers and the classes. And so that would contribute to that side of the well-being of our community members, which we really need to caregivers for as well. Just want to put that out.
Yep. Thanks for that. Anyone else? Thoughts, comments? Beverly, yeah.
I want to step back a little bit and disagree on Dick's Park a little bit, because I think that while I am big in favor of a $200-300 million for our existing parks and greenways, I think it's cliche to I won't use the word on Dick's. I mean, Brad is exactly right. It's got a huge marketing thing. And because of that, if we don't do something at Dick's, we're not in tune with what's been created as a rhythm in our community. So, I mean, I think, you know, Dick's is there where it's going to happen. And I think our role has to be sure to protect all of the other parks and that they don't get lost in the shuffle, but I don't think we can just say Dick's doesn't matter, because it does.
Thank you. Chris, Rashawn, Charlie, anybody else have any thoughts? No. Charlie?
I'm just looking through all the work that we had previously done and the the topic of just kind of having tiers. Is the Dick's Park also going to be brought up to city or for a vote as well? So are they bringing both bonds back?
I don't think
That's,
there is two bonds. It is one, it will be one parks bond.
but they will put, the city council will decide what amount they would want to put toward Dick's, and that would go into this bond. And it's possible they could remove some of the council can do as they wish. So they could decide that they would remove a couple of these projects and put more money toward Dick's. That is always a possibility.
And they may
So,
very well try to, instead of just, putting in a lump sum for Dick's, they may go ahead and just kind of detail out specific projects within Dick's and maybe even put those within a tier system as well. So that's another possibility of something that may happen. So that way there's a little bit more transparency in project timeline and details, as opposed to just a lump sum of, at one time they were talking 25 or 50 million, a detailed, project specific layout will be done.
Mm-hmm.
and so would we, I guess I'm just trying to follow with what everyone's been suggesting so far. So as it stands now, we would just be re-recommending, if nothing were to change, our previous tier system to council. Unless, if I can't remember who said, suggesting just dropping tier 1, and I'm under the assumption that was meant to combine tier 1 and tier 2. Am I following everything correctly?
Yeah, that's right. That's what Beverly had said. And Stephen, just to clarify, we, at the next meeting, between this meeting and our next meeting, you would send out some survey that we would fill out. And then at our next meeting, we would have some discussion, and we would at that point recommend what we're doing and sending to council.
Yes, and what we've heard tonight will help inform our questions. It's going to be talking about how important is it for you to have improved access, like to greenways, or to focus on improvements to our existing community centers. We'll have Likert scale questions, but it'll help the board anonymously respond to some of the things they've talked about. And one that you talked about, Jen, was that one council member did at my presentation talk about there's not enough projects in their district. That will be a question for you all. How important is it to have geography, and an option that you've discussed? You don't have to change the list at all. You can say, we worked really hard and we believe the criteria we used is solid and it conforms with the direction of the city. Because equity was actually the highest weighted item within your criteria. But yes, to answer your question, there'll be a survey that comes to you. It won't be that long, maybe 12 questions, but it'll be based upon what we heard this evening.
So the reason I'm pushing for a lot of conversation right now is I sort of feel like this is our time to talk about it. And then at the next meeting, we need to figure out what we're recommending. And I guess we'll wordsmith it after that, but then it'll be going to council. So that's that. Dr. Love, I saw your hand up.
I've been listening to everyone, and I'm looking forward to getting the survey. But I think that we worked really hard and we had a lot of community input. So whatever changes we make, I don't think should be that significant unless we're going to combine the tiers. So looking forward to the survey, Stephen.
And it'll come to you by the end of next week. And we'll actually turn the results around. You'll have them before the meeting so you can reflect upon them beforehand. That's why I was like, it's really, pretty tight turnaround. Even if we give you the survey for a week, February is a short month, and we actually have to turn a report down, turn it around in a matter of days to get to the council by their first meeting in March. So
I may not make a lot of comments because I was just in a 2.5-hour meeting with Luke on Javis Historic Plaza, so I'll just listen.
Is it plausible to think we can answer those questions and then come back and come to a decision by the end of the next meeting? Or is a special meeting warranted in between now and the regular February?
I think it might, I kind of wanted to see what folks would say tonight and what the feeling was amongst the board members, and if there was a lot of discussion and you know, differences of opinion. I'm not hearing a lot. You know, there's some thoughts on you know, maybe some things that we need to look at, but I think I would recommend we look at the survey, see what comes of that, see where we are, and at that time, I don't know, is there time after our February board meeting? There's not, is there, to try to squeeze anything after that? I'm looking at Stephen, but he doesn't know. I'm looking, hi.
No, I'd have to look at my calendar, but I think there's only about 8 days between your
Yeah.
board meeting and the council meeting. It's up to the board, you know, staff, we'll deliver on whatever you want us to do. So.
Brad?
The only thing I'll say, you've sort of offhandedly mentioned it, but I do think it's important to say that if they want to go for a smaller bond, they need a dedicated capital investment slush for the department. We're going to keep falling farther and farther behind. If we're not going to even get to the core of the department's needs in a $100 million, $200 million bond, we're just going to keep falling further and further behind our needs. And so whether it's a penny tax or a penny tax for parks and a penny tax for greenways, you know, if they want a smaller bond number, they really need to consider sort of that throwing a cent or two into the budget.
Absolutely.
And
and
we
that
have
was
currently the lowest taxes in the city, in the county. So
yeah, that was something that we had written in the memo last year that went along with our tiered recommendations, and I would recommend we keep that in the memo. I think that's a strong point, and yeah.
And as a follow-up, that was an item that was brought up at this week's council. It seems like it's been a long time ago, but this week's council. So staff is going to be working on a council update report just to kind of give them a better idea of some of the deferred maintenance needs that the department does have. So that way they can still look at maybe possibly considering a penny tax, especially if you all go ahead and make that recommendation with this bond moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
There you go, Brad.
Two pennies.
Beverly?
2 pennies.
Related to somebody's question on are we going to meet it again, maybe we should sort of collectively pencil the 11th of February in to hold it as a possible meeting once we get the survey results. I don't know. Just
yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah, I think that could be a good idea.
Yeah, I could do the 11th as well. And I just wanted to piggyback off what Dr. Love said. I'm just excited and ready to see the survey. I think we need to stick with our plan, with the original plan for the tier 1, and kind of what Lindsay was saying. When it comes to those districts with those urgent needs, I think that's what we need to stick to in regards of when it comes to the bond, and make sure we get those needs and wants for the people in the community implemented. So
Thanks for showing. That's great. Yeah. Well, good. Unless there's any more discussion on this item, I think we can move on and look forward to seeing the survey and seeing what comes out of that.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. All right, very good. So next on the agenda is the director's report, Oscar.
Yes. Give me one second. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. I had to put it away, but I did want to say it's great seeing everyone once again. Happy New Year. I hope everyone had a safe and blessed holiday season, and now it's time to get back to work. So good to see everyone once again. As you all may have seen, the director's report is kind of short this month, just because we are coming off of the holiday season. But the big one is at the January 5th council meeting, based on y'all's hard work on a revision of the P5, that was brought to council consideration after you all had recommended the revised P5. TJ did a great update to council and Jennifer was able to go ahead and provide the recommendation to council, and they unanimously approved the public participation policy for park planning at the January 5th. So we've got a new guidebook now for public engagement as it deals with park projects. So we're very happy that that's a huge load off of your work plan. So let's put a big check mark off of that one, and it's time to move forward with this new revised plan. So thank you all again for your efforts, and for staff for supporting you all on these efforts as well. As Stephen just mentioned, this past week, we did give the same park bond presentation to council. So we're awaiting further direction on how we're going to proceed with that as we move forward, and looking forward to continuing to work with you all on this proposed park bond for a 2021 referendum. Then also at this week's council meeting, Lex Janes, who unfortunately is not with us today, was reappointed for a second term on the Parks, Recreation, Greenways Advisory Board. So we're happy to keep Lex on board with us. So congratulations, Lex. And with that, that is the end of my director's report, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you, Oscar. Anyone have any questions for Oscar? Okay. Very good. Well, next we just have our standing committee reports. First is Parks Committee. Chris, I don't think you guys met. Whoop, is he? Oh, there you are. Yeah.
That is correct.
Okay, very good. Fred Fletcher Committee, Charlie.
Yeah, we've got our upcoming meeting on Tuesday, February 9th. So far, the process is going just as years prior have. We are starting to think a little bit more about any potential impacts COVID may have on this year's award ceremony too. So we're trying to stay ahead of the game. I'll be sending to the rest of the board a few meeting time potentially that we're kind of going to be discussing maybe different ways to celebrate this year the award winners. So if you would be looking to participate in that, once I hear back from staff on the final date of that meeting time, separate from the committee meeting, I'll send it to you all.
Very good, thank you. Okay, Beverly, Greenways.
Greenways Committee met on Monday, January 11th, and the presentation was an update on the Greenways Master planning process. And there are a few key takeaways. Most of you all have heard before that the last master plan was done in 1989, so it's been a while. The overall master plan advisory committee is made up of 23 different folks, very diverse group, from police officers to Parks and Rec board members and lots in between. Originally Greenways only followed stream corridors. Now there's a broader desire for Greenways to connect people with places, not just with transit, but using Greenways to connect parks. There's been extensive surveying of the public done, and there's a real desire, surprise, surprise, for more amenities, comfort stations, benches, signage, all those kinds of things that we all know and why we support a parks bond, because that's the only way those things are going to happen. There are going to be some upcoming interim reports for public that will then solicit public input. And a reminder to all the Greenway Committee members, I think you got an email from Giovanni about that the staff is working on a safety plan and wants input, and this applies to any board member. Your personal definition of what safety is. It was very interesting that when as part of the master planning process, when safety was one of the survey questions, personal safety, crime-related safety didn't move the needle. Of course, things have happened since then that have caused it to move the needle. But we all have different ways of looking at whether it's cyclists or hoverboards or whatever going on that how we define safety, multiple uses of a greenway. So next meeting is February 8th, and that's all there is there. Any
Great.
questions?
Thanks, Beverly. Marcia, Sustainability, Wildlife, and Urban Trees Committee.
Yes, we are meeting Monday at 4. So we didn't meet earlier, don't have a report from earlier in the month. So if anybody would be interested in participating in that committee, please let me know, Scott knows, Sally know, and we'll add you to the contact list.
Very good, thank you. On to committee reports, Neuse River Blueway. Lex isn't here and we got a presentation on that tonight. So anything else that we need to discuss? Nope. Devereaux Meadow, did you guys meet? Anyone have a report? I think that's Brad, Christina, and Charlie, right?
That is me.
Okay.
That is
Yeah.
me, but we haven't met yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they haven't told us.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. Committee liaison representatives, Raleigh Youth Council. Do we have any representatives on tonight?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Carmen.
How are you doing? Good to see everyone this new year. I just want to introduce Sydney Howard. She's joining us tonight as one of the executive members. She's a Millbrook High School junior. Sydney is also our vice chair in the Raleigh Youth Council. She enjoys doing community service and represents teams throughout the city. She is also the secretary of Millbrook Key Club, and she participates in the International Baccalaureate Student Executive Committee. Her name is saying Carmen Miles, but I promise it's only one of me. But she is here, and also joining her tonight is Eugene Lee. You all met him last time. So I'll let them talk to you guys about what we've been up to.
All right, so one thing the Raleigh Youth Council is currently doing is we're actively trying to recruit new members. This year, because of the coronavirus situation, recruiting new members has been harder than any other year. However, our executive council, and specifically our publicity chair, have come up with several ways to attract new members, and we plan to continue using methods from the past that have been proven to be successful. For example, our council acknowledges whoever brings the most people to join the council at the end of every year. In addition, we have handed out RYC flyers and have had Bring a Friend Day to RYC. If you know any teenagers that are not currently in our council, please recommend us to them. They can reach us via Carmen's email and we can send them a link to join the meetings, which are the 2nd and 4th Mondays of every month. And then another important aspect of RYC is setting goals. Obviously, as you can imagine, the pandemic has altered our goals for the future. In fact, our next meeting is actually dedicated to setting up goals for the future that the council as a whole could achieve. For example, in the past, we set goals to host conferences with other councils from all over North Carolina. In addition, we have come up with new community service projects, especially in the virtual world this year. Lastly, another goal we have in mind is bringing new members to the council, which I mentioned before.
Very good. Thank you for that report. Sydney?
Yes, hi, I'm Sydney. I'm a representative for the Raleigh Youth Council here tonight. So another thing that we've been working on as the Youth Council is a community service event at the Walnut Creek Wetland Center, and we're going to do an invasive species removal. So we really take pride in serving our community, and I think like helping our parks is a really good way to do that. And we actually have a member of our council who has volunteered to support the stakeholder committee for the Devereaux Meadow Park, and we look forward to working with you guys and growing our partnership.
Oh, there we go. Very good. Thank you both for those reports. Much appreciated. And we're so glad that you're both here. I see clapping. Beverly has something to say.
You know, we didn't have this relationship with the Raleigh Youth Council when we went through all of the bond projects. And I'm just kind of blue sky. How do we, they're the future users of all these projects. So how do we bring them into the loop and solicit their input? I just throw that out. I'm sure.
Excellent point.
So actually, Stephen and I were talking about that. We will be sending the members here tonight. We'll be getting a copy of the notebook from 2020 work to see kind of that whole litany of the work that the Parks Board did. And we will include them on the survey. So they will also get the same survey.
Good.
So that they will have an opportunity to study the work that was done that you all did for 2020 preparation, and have the ability to comment and submit their thoughts on bond as part of the Park Board survey.
Very good. Thank you for thinking of that. Great. Any other comments or feedback for the Raleigh Youth Council representatives? Okay, just thumbs up. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Let's see, next, Carol, have you had a meeting yet with the Arts Commission? Oh, you're still muted. There you go.
And I took notes about things that impressed me. And then today I got a cheat sheet from Sarah Powers, the chair. And so I won't be comprehensive. Y'all all go to sleep before I could do that. And maybe myself today. The thing that struck me, I'm going to go to my own notes and then maybe hit one of these things that she bulleted. You've all seen pictures of, or you've seen live, or both, that extraordinary mural on the Chavis building, on the glass, on the. When I saw that in a slide, it knocked my socks off. Well, it turns out that, I'm sure I've heard this before, but it didn't sink in until I heard it at the Arts Commission, that the photos and stories of the neighborhood residents were what inspired that mural. And also the complexity, each panel had to be painted. And so it immediately filled me with joy and awe and sorrow, and because it's so rich. But when I saw it and heard this, it just made it even more marvelous. So I did want to share that with you. And then, yeah, the art explosion has been on my back burner, way back there for a while, especially this year. But they've really been doing a lot of stuff, a lot more than I knew. And for example, they were responsible for the painting of the boards that were put on commercial buildings downtown after our violence that we had there. And I wasn't aware of their active participation in that. So kudos to Art Explosion. Another item, I didn't know we had a youth poet laureate for the nation. And I didn't know that we have a new Piedmont laureate ourselves. So Kelly Starling Lyons, she writes children's books, which helps me forgive myself for not knowing who she is. And there's no picture, I don't know anything about her, but when it says author of children's books, including the acclaimed picture book Ellen's Broom, well, there's a story in African American heritage about jumping to broom. And so I looked down farther on Sarah's cheat sheet, and it says, she's the founder of the Brown Bookshelf, a digital resource for parents, teachers, and librarians designed to push awareness of myriad Black voices writing for young readers. So after my very first meeting with the Arts Commission, I was A, very overwhelmed, and B, I can still pull out a few things that I thought y'all would like to hear about.
Wonderful.
I'm sorry I can't do it with an Irish accent. clutter really, I just could listen to it all day.
I was like, why would you do that? Oh, right.
Because of clutter. It always sounded better when she said it. I'm Southern, what can I say?
Thank you, Carol. That was great. Much appreciated. Where are we? BPAC. Christina.
Hey guys, I did have a meeting last week with BPAC and they were really, really super nice. Had a really great conversation. We didn't have anything much to say in regards to the council. They were just really interested and excited to join forces, but I did receive an email from them just recently. And I was hoping to get some clarification or guidance on how to respond. And they were wondering, it's about the Reedy Creek. Hang on, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to read and at the same time. It's the Project Athens impact on Reedy Creek Trail. And they mentioned that since there's a side path on both Edwards Mill and Reedy Creek, that there's a concern with the new multi-lane dual turn intersection on Reedy Creek. So I figured I'd bring it up here in case I can have some assistance in answering that question or being able to bring something back to the next meeting to help answer that.
Christine, if you want to go ahead and email me any of that information, I can go ahead and have staff, help with a response.
Report. Yeah.
And bring back to the board.
Okay, I will do that. Other than that, it was a great meeting, pretty much an introduction. Everybody was really, really friendly. And I look forward to meeting with them again.
Christina, I have a question. We had talked about having someone as a representative from BPAC attend our Greenways committee meetings. And Beverly, I guess this is for you as well. Has that been progressed? Is there anyone that they
that up at the meeting, but no one had volunteered to come at that moment. So I think there were some people missing from the meeting. So that was something that I have to follow back up with, which I haven't, but I did ask at that meeting.
Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you. All right, very good. Historic cemeteries, Sally. Let's see. Saw you earlier.
Yep.
Oh, there you are.
I'm here. No report.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Dick's leadership. I don't have a report. We're meeting next week. So I'll have more to report. And then historical resources and museums, same. We're meeting next week. So I'll have a report at the next meeting.
We do have a new executive director of the Dix Park Conservancy. And
that's
she's
true.
Somebody who has been on council before and is a Raleigh native. So
yeah, that's true. I saw that. Thanks for bringing that up. Interesting. Chair report. The one thing I'll mention is that I did have a conversation back a couple weeks ago with Councilman Buffkin. He is officially our liaison to the Parks Board from the council. And so we have agreed to have conversations every 6 weeks or so just to touch base and keep him up to speed on what we're working on, any new things happening on the board, and sort of get his ideas of what he thinks that council are talking about and thinking. So that was actually really helpful. I mentioned to him our efforts for closer coordination with BPAC, and he was very happy to hear about that. That was something that was close and dear to his heart. And also mentioned that we have new liaison members from the Raleigh Youth Council, and he was thrilled to hear that and thought that sounded wonderful. We briefly touched on the bond discussion, and he mentioned the need for more geographic diversity. And I expressed what I mentioned earlier, that we felt like the projects that we recommended were the ones that had the most merit, but that we as a board can look at that again and review, certainly. So those were the highlights, and that's really all I have to share. I would just encourage us all to look through that bond list and that we recommended the last time with sort of fresh eyes, and just be sure we're feeling good about it before the survey comes out.
Jennifer? Yeah. I'd like to say that Dexter offered at a Parks Board meeting for interested members of this board to attend racial equity training. And I attended that. I was the only person from the Parks Board that attended it. It's a virtual, and it was really worthwhile. It's called the groundwater training, and Kendall also was part of that group. The YMCA and DHIC and some other entities in Raleigh sponsored it, and it was 3 hours on a Saturday morning and 2 hours on this past Monday, Martin Luther King Day. And it for people that are interested in how to be more informed about systemic racism, it's a really, really wonderful thing to do. It'll get you thinking, and then you'll be more effective in speaking up when you need to. So I just wanted to put a plug. They're doing another one on February 11th. So you can contact Dexter and ask to be put on the notification list if you're interested.
Thanks, Marcia. Yeah, I actually attended that through ULI, the Urban Land Institute, back a few months ago, and also found it really informative and interesting, and just a really good eye-opening thing to attend. So, yep, thanks for that.
And Jennifer, if I can kind of piggyback on that, Dr. Caesar, who provided a presentation to us a few months ago, that's over the Human Relations Commission. I think they're getting close to finalizing a contract with a training organization to provide training for all the city boards and commissions, and I believe they may be utilizing REI groundwater as well. So within the upcoming months, they will be providing some schedule for trainings, and we will be go ahead and be sharing that with the board.
Great, thank you for that update. This is time for sort of round table. If anyone has anything else that they'd like to discuss, add, comment, question. Beverly, yeah.
Again, this is sort of a blue sky thing, but have we thought about as a board adopting a park or a part of the Greenway or something like that, where we could, especially part of the Greenway, where we could be outside and do trash pickup, or do something that was collegial and together, which is better than virtual, and was also something that improved the resource that we care so much about, that we are on this advisory board for. So I don't know whether there's any precedent for adopt a Greenway part, or I saw on social media that they were doing invasive removal from Dix Park, and I thought, well, as you all have said, well, why not other parts of the park? I know lots of places that need invasive removal.
Crabtree is almost all invasives.
Yeah,
there wouldn't be anything left almost.
And so, I just thought, well, if Sally wants to think about that, or if there's any, it doesn't have to be the whole board, but if we might set some dates as.
I love that idea. I think that's great. Anyone else? Show of hands. Is anyone interested in that? Great. Okay.
Yay.
Yeah. I think that'd be great.
This is fantastic. All right, we'll get to work on some options. Thank you so much.
Okay. Good idea, Beverly. Brad, I think I saw your hand up.
Just a small note. We had that pretty dramatic rezoning last month in downtown South, and it caused me to go through and look at all of the rezoning cases around the city, just to see what other major zoning cases there were out there. And I found one on Newbern and Rogers Lane that had just gone through the process. Planning Commission had endorsed 10-0 in November. And that parcel is adjacent to the Neuse River Greenway. Apparently staff had requested somewhere along the process that they connect to the Neuse River Greenway. But the applicant was like, oh, we can't do that, nah. And they got, it was the public hearing, the date of decision was supposed to be on January 5th. Seeing that and understanding that council was willing to add conditions to rezonings like this, I did request that they add conditions to connect to the Greenway there and connect to transit there, both of which the applicant was not requesting to do. I'm pointing it out because they've now delayed it, and I think they're adding conditions to that effect now. But the reason to point it out is a lot of times we really focus on these sort of center city, maybe old part of the city rezonings, and we lose track of some of these larger projects outside of it. There are some success stories there too. The Old Town development, TJ worked really, really closely with them to make sure that there was a Greenway access through there, and fought tooth and nail to try to get us a bridge over Walnut Creek. I don't think we ended up getting that. But there are these rezonings, and now with the precedent that has been set with the number of conditions that Downtown South included in their rezoning request, that we can ask for that type of stuff when they're proximate to parks and they're proximate to Greenway facilities. So if you go to, there's a website for development activity in the city. You can go just check it out and poke around. I just happen to be weirdly very excited about that Rogers and Newbern intersection because I can't take the bus to the Greenway, to News River Greenway. It's our largest park asset in the city, and you can't take transit to it, which is kind of funny. So I got really excited about it, and got a little on the horn, as you know I do. But you all know in different other parts of the city, you know, projects that matter to you, and you understand where those connectivity gaps are. And so I would just, from time to time, check in on the rezonings that are coming through, just to see if there might be an appropriate condition to add connections, particularly to the Greenway system.
On that note, I will step to the front of the gunfire, and I will say, I wonder how appropriate it is or is not for members of the board, because I do not want staff to be shot down with me. I want to protect them. They're doing the real work. Every time there's a rezoning or a planned development adjacent to a park, I get all riled up, and I wonder if, in my more logical moments, if there isn't some way for us to say, to present information saying, this is a historic graveyard, this is an important stormwater area, this place has a heritage tree, or, you know, if we just, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I see Shelley Lake and all these other places, you know, Downtown South's going to affect Walnut Creek. And I just wonder, is there an appropriate professional place where we could say, the conditions this developer is proposing are going to affect this park positively in this way and negatively in this way? I don't know. It seems like it's so close to the political line. I've never said anything about it before. So I'm just throwing that out there. I'll never bring it up again.
Well, I wrote down on my little notes to self, and do a big circle around this to ask about protecting parks from development encroachment. So it's very in keeping with what Carol's saying. That might be something that we could talk about at another
inappropriate, damaging development. There's going to be development. There's going to be development next to parks. But I just wish we could protect the integrity of our parks and the value that they have to our residents. I think that's a very important thing.
It is.
Yeah, and I think that's what Brad was getting at. If you see, you know, any of those projects that are happening, you know, take a note on this. There's always a sign when there's a rezoning and what the number is, and go look it up online, and, you know, kind of see what they're suggesting to do there, and if there are any conditions that are being put forward, and then that would be the time to note that. And then you're a volunteer citizen, so you can attend any, you know, any meetings and make any comments, not necessarily on behalf of the entire board, of course, but, you know, as yourself.
As myself.
Yes, and I was gonna say that as a practice, whenever there is something that's going to be impacting a park or greenway, whether adjacent to or whatever, it is common practice or usual practice for staff to review. I think TJ does a lot of this for us and makes comments that are going to benefit us. But as you mentioned, if there is something that you all see, a zoning case, I think the best avenue is, to go ahead and provide that comment during the public comment period, whether it be a hearing or even a public comment during city council, because I think typically that's what really kind of catches the ear of either the planning commission or the city council.
Thank you.
Beverly.
A recent example I saw of that on the Greenway that, of course, didn't hit me until far down in the project's development was the new North Carolina Agricultural Center at the corner of Edwards Mill and Reedy Creek. Now, technically, that long block of Reedy Creek is considered Greenway, even though it's just Sharrow or the bike lane. But what a large area there could have been paved with off-road greenway if we, just like is on the other side of Edwards Mill, if it had been required. And it strikes me that we don't have the tools available to us to make that happen. And I don't know what the tools are. But it's a shame that with all of the asphalt that they put down and all the gravel during construction that they put down, and that's a very heavily used stretch of Greenway for cyclists, that there wasn't an extension. And when that, how do we figure out when things like that, again, construction adjacent to a Greenway, but it's not the typical Greenway.
I happen to work on that project, so I can tell you that was actually a state project that didn't have to go through the typical city permitting process in some regards. So that's how that happened.
Then we need to communicate with the state.
Noted, yeah. But it does tie in. There is a sidewalk that gets you over to the corner, so yeah. But thanks.
I wanted to report that the committee that was working on the interpretive plan for Chavis Historical Plaza finished our work today, and you'll be getting a report at the next meeting.
Wonderful. Great. How do you feel about it?
I'm pretty happy about the way it's going.
Good. Great. Good to hear. Very good. Anyone else have anything to share or report?
I've got a small staff request that came out of the Greenways Committee. In the current Greenways plan, there is a map that plots the slope of each Greenway in the system. Can we get that extracted out as a standalone map, cleaned up for presentation and put on the website right next to the overall system map?
And the reason for that is because it's so helpful for people to know when they're heading out, if they're heading out with strollers or kids on training wheels or whatever, to know whether, oh my gosh, there's a huge hill, I don't want to be going here, or, oh gee, this is a really nice flat. So adding that sort of in the same way that we have closures and everything else on that Greenway website would be fantastic.
Sure, I can go ahead and pass that on to staff.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, we have completed our agenda. So unless there's anything else, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Lindsay Saunders.
Great. Thank you. Very good. Well, great seeing you guys. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll be talking between now and next. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Take care. Stay safe. Stay